Hello, welcome to Advancing the Mission, where we keep you informed and up to date on what is happening in global missions, local outreach, and church multiplication through the lens of County Line Church. I am Outreach Pastor Chris Kazmarek.
And I'm Multiplication Pastor Mary Ellen Rail.
Awesome. And we have with us today Patrick and Jamie Nachtigall, and they are the regional coordinators for Three Worlds for Europe and the Middle East. So we've been supporting them for many years here at County Line, and we're excited to talk to them. We talked to Nate and Stacy Tapman last week, who are the associate regional coordinators, and so they are the associates to them. So
Yes.
So let's just jump right into it. So the two of you guys you started Three Worlds. So can you tell us how that vision came to be and how you went about creating it?
Yeah, well, both Patrick and I are from missions-oriented families. Our parents and our grandparents were missionaries. And so we both have just grown up in the world of missions, seeing, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so after we had served about 9 years in Hong Kong, and we were approached to consider becoming the regional coordinators for Europe and the Middle East, the big thing on our minds was, if we're going to step into a role like this, we want to be able to proactively address issues that we thought were pertinent to missionaries, to cross-cultural ministry, and to the Church of God around the world. So on the one side, in terms of missions, it was very much coming out of our own experience as adult missionaries, but then also all the way back to our childhoods as mission kids, things that we really wanted to try in order to support our missionaries here in the region better, to enable them to best fulfill the calling on their lives. And then at the same time that we were transitioning, Patrick was in the midst of writing the book Mosaic, a journey across the Church of God. And so he had been traveling to every continent, every region, visiting churches of God and leaders, interviewing, finding out how they do church in their particular context. And he learned in that process that there were three especially key issues that almost every church and every leader was facing, no matter the culture, no matter the location. And so we decided we wanted to proactively address those issues as well. So those were the two primary facets, and that led to the vision of Three Worlds and how we wanted to approach ministry in this region.
So what were those three things?
Yeah, well, the thing that I saw in almost every single country that I visited was that there were a lack of young people in the churches. Mm-hmm. And even if some of the countries had quite a lot of young people, like in certain countries in Africa, there was no system of kind of mentoring and training and raising them up into ministry and into leadership. So the very first thing was to engage young people in ministry and cross-cultural ministry and reach out to the young generation. The second thing was to support empowered and accountable leaders under the age of 45. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that age division there is because pretty much everywhere we had plenty of pastors and people in leadership over the age of 45. But for when we started the millennial generation and Gen X all around the world, there was really very, very little to help a young person through the process of getting into ministry or on the mission field. So we wanted to really create systems that would surround these young people, because what was happening was, without those systems, we were having a lot of kids in the US even, they go to seminary, they go to their first church, nobody walks with them. It turns out to be a bad experience, and then they just leave ministry at the age of 23, 24. That was happening all over. And so we really needed to be able to create systems that walk alongside the young people. And then the last thing was creating interconnectivity between the different countries. Pretty much everywhere I went, most countries, you had a number of churches and they had very little interaction with each other. Oftentimes they didn't even have like an annual national meeting. Sometimes people in neighboring countries didn't even know there was a Church of God in the country next to them. So the amount of balkanization and division was very, very, very extreme. So what we wanted to do was create this network that would connect all of our 14 countries so that we're in constant, not just interaction and communication, but even synergy, working with different ministries, supporting each other, visiting each other. And that's really incredible to see.
Yeah, I think that connectivity is like so important. The thing that Three Worlds does with that. So how many years has it been now? And kind of more like, so we started there, what are we doing now? And how do you get some of those things accomplished today?
Yeah, well, we are in our 11th year now of doing this, and it's been an incredibly successful run. I don't say that bragging, I say that because our goals were so modest inside. Like we had a big vision, the one we just detailed on the outside, but walking into it deep down, we were like, man, we're gonna be lucky to pull off, even half of one of these things, because the odds just seem too, huge against us. So it was really a miraculous God thing, that the team that he brought to us, the supporting churches, the speed at which it happened. And interestingly enough, County Line and Nathan, and Stacy were at the very beginning of the vision before we'd even come up with the logo. And I mean, it was just like God had ordained this moment for this brand new venture. And so, the very first important piece was choosing a very special kind of missionary, one that was extremely global-minded, missionaries that could work in multiple different cultures, not just one, missionaries that could operate in a traditional church or a non-Western church or a post-Christendom church, missionaries that were very into teamwork and knew how to work on teams without causing conflict. So we were really looking for missionaries that were more like consultants and synergists, which was very different than the old model of just kind of sending a missionary to one country and they dig in on one ministry. So that was the first step, was assembling a great team. The second step was making contact with every country and every single young person that we could find in those countries, and develop relationships, find out where they were at, what their dreams were. We did that over the course of a couple of years, so that within about 4 years, we were able to have our first 3WLN conference, which brought together all these young leaders who didn't know they existed. They didn't know each other existed. So that created a network. And then as that was building up, we started finding, even organically, without us having to push it, that one church in England might want to, now that they knew there was a church in Egypt, wanted to go visit, or that young people from Hungary wanted to go, or vice versa. Or so all these, became like an airport with just things taking off and landing all the time. And that was exactly the vision that we'd had 11 years ago. And to see all of that actually happen, and really by year 4, was pretty miraculous, very, very miraculous.
Yeah.
And I'll just add on, I think, he's talking about missionaries, and that, the missionaries on our team are a lot more kind of like consultants. And I think a big part of that, even when we started, we kind of used the phrase, helping the church understand missions in the 21st century. And the past 10 years, especially, there have been so many changes, so many transitions, that the rate at which the church has changed, the rate at which technology has changed, politics, just everything is just mind-blowing. And so we really view our team as bridge builders. We want people who are familiar with where we've come from and have a vision for where we're going, and can help across that divide, because it's a huge divide in all of those areas. And so we really do look for, folks, the people on our team are people who are really gifted at bridging those divides. So.
Awesome. Yeah, so you guys talked a little bit about your missionaries, and we've chatted with a few of them. We talked with the Kims, we've talked with the Langfords, we're talking with the De Franciscos, I think, next week. So we talked with them, and it seems that almost every time we talk with them, it always comes up this conversation of post-Christendom. So can you guys talk a little bit about what that looks like in Europe and in that context, and how do you effectively do ministry in a context like that?
Yeah, sure. But by post-Christendom, we really mean that, in the West, especially, beginning in the West, in Europe and in Canada and Australia, New Zealand, and now increasingly in the United States, you had cultures that were culturally Christian, very familiar with Christianity. Maybe they had Christian kings, or the Catholic Church was very strong, or the Anglican or Protestant Church was very strong. And around after the Enlightenment in the 1700s, 1800s, there was a big change in which there was the growth of a lot of more modern thinking. There was the rise of, for instance, Darwinism and Marxism, secular humanism, a belief in man more than a need for God and religion. And so a lot of those countries, religion really was not practiced as much. And especially after World War I and II, we saw a lot of countries in Europe become very secular. People don't go to church. Maybe you have 4% of people in Germany in church on a Sunday. It can get as low as like 2% in some countries. And so people actually, even though they have Christmas holiday and Easter and churches everywhere, they don't actually really know about the gospel of Jesus Christ. They don't even know what the meaning of Easter is. It's maybe part of their cultural heritage, but they don't, they have to show up but they don't actually know anything about it actually. And so our societies in the West have really grown in this way and become more secular. And that's even happening now in non-Western countries that are typically highly, highly religious. And you're seeing a younger generation that doesn't want to have anything to do with religion. And one of the reasons is religion has brought a lot of harm and damage to these countries. They didn't just decide God was a bad guy. They literally, in some cases, spent hundreds of years killing each other over religion. So that embedded in them the sense that religion is dangerous, not be public. Anyway, so what you end up having to do is you go to these countries and there's just a deep, deep prejudice or ignorance about why you would need God in the modern world, why you would need religion in the modern world. Whereas in non-Western societies, they start from the basic premise that the world is spiritual, that there are gods and spirits all around us. That mission first kind of introduced people to the idea of spirituality and why religion is even important, and then what Christianity is as opposed to institutional Christianity. So it's actually more difficult than taking the gospel to Africa, where Christianity grows very quickly and people are inherently spiritual by nature.
Yeah.
And here in Germany, but in Europe in general too, the quality of life is very, very high. And so you have a lot of people who are perfectly comfortable and happy and feel that they are lacking nothing. Mm-hmm. So how then do you help introduce the concept or the need of a spiritual life? Mm-hmm. It's quite challenging. And a lot of times here in Europe, the discussion is very intellectual and heady. So, if you're not comfortable kind of launching into these really complex intellectual, philosophical conversations, you're a goner.
And I know from the other people that we talk to that you work with, when they're building relationships with people there, they don't start out with that. They don't start out with faith and spirituality. They have all said to us, we're friends with people. We talk about the weather. when they ask us what we do, we kind of stammer around and make something up so that they can have an opportunity to first build relationships with people before they take the discussion to the next level. Just a different world.
Yeah.
Because we all, it's often in moments too when crisis hits that we all find ourselves vulnerable. And so many times, you know, on our team, we've had those moments where, you know, someone who has never been interested in having any kind of a conversation of a spiritual nature, suddenly some kind of a crisis may arise in their life. And suddenly this door is open and they know that you're a trusted person,
Yes.
you know, who cares about them unconditionally. And they suddenly will lean on, you know, on us or on that person, you know, and it then comes the opportunity to really make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, and they don't want to feel like a product, like you're just there to make a sale.
Right.
And, you know, and also telling someone that the whole fundamental way they view the world is wrong is kind of a big deal. And, you know, a lot of times American evangelicals are just like, preach the gospel, blah, blah, blah. But American evangelicals themselves don't like it when Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses knock on their door and tell them that the church they're going to is completely wrong and they need to read the Book of Mormon or something. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah. I'm so thankful for the work that you're doing and the thoughtfulness in really recognizing the culture. And Jamie mentioned your book, Mosaic, where you had this opportunity to visit all these places. Patrick, can you tell us about some of the other books that you've done and what you have coming next?
Sure, yeah. The first book I wrote is called Passport of Faith, which is an introduction to the different world religions from a Christian point of view. So like Buddhism, Taoism, Judaism, Islam. And in each chapter, I travel to two different countries and visit with people in those countries and have these little adventures with people that are of that faith, but I do it from a Christian perspective. So it kind of takes you on a global sightseeing tour, that first book. My second book was about globalization. It was kind of just a shorter general overview of globalization and how it interacts with Christianity. The third one was about the Church of God around the world. And the fourth one was about Islam and from a Christian perspective. And that's kind of an introduction to Islam for Christians. And then I had another book that was about the Americanization of Christianity, which was really about what are the characteristics of Christianity in the United States that are more American than they are biblical.
This is really relevant right now.
Yeah, that one was written.
We have been having that same discussion this week.
Well, yeah, it was written 6 years ago or 7 years ago before all of this. And actually, it's a book I'm really proud of that sold less than any of my other books. So, you know, and it's probably the most, you know, timely and fitting. So that's the way it goes. That one was called In God We Trust, a challenge to American evangelicals. And then most recently, I wrote my autobiography. And it's a book I have right here. What a coincidence. Oh my goodness. Did you do that?
Wow.
Yes.
Great.
What a coincidence. Yes. It's called No Religion Required, a memoir of faith, doubt, chocolate milk, and untimely death. And it is a funny.
Captions, always your captions.
The subtitles.
Thank you. It is, I love those little subtitles, but it is meant to be a funny book, hopefully. But it's my story of my dream that started when I was a very little kid to be a missionary in the middle of China, some rural village somewhere. And it kind of follows my life on that adventure to get to China as a missionary, and all the misadventures I had and all the wild things that God put in front of me, and lots of embarrassing moments in there. So, but underneath all that is a more serious theme, which is why does the world need religion?
Mm-hmm.
And why can religion go so wrong sometimes? So even though this book is for everybody, it's also especially for people who have felt very wounded by the church, or people who have just walked away from religion. So if you have like an uncle or a cousin or a niece or a nephew that is not interested in religion or Christianity, or has been hurt, I really recommend this book, because this book really sympathizes with that. And I share from the point of view of someone, who has been hurt a lot in the church. And so it's not a book that condemns people about their doubt, which is why both the word doubt and faith are in the title. So yeah, and that's it. And we're on the next book. I have a novel that I wrote 10, 11 years, no, I guess 15 years ago. Yeah, that I just have never gotten around to getting out, and I'd love to do that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that sounds good.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, and then we did also want to ask, just, we know Marco is your son, and he's getting ready to go off to college, and we just wanted to hear from you guys about that and what you're feeling with that, but also just
and how we can pray for you
for
Marco in his transition.
Yeah, well, he is our only child, and he turns 18 later this month, so a huge milestone there. But he's in his senior year of high school, and right in the middle of the process of getting college acceptances and trying to decide where he's gonna go in the fall. So he's contemplating his options and trying to find the right place for him. You can pray for him as he looks at
Financial aid.
financial aid. I was going to say, as he looks at moving back to the USA, which, yes, is his passport country, but he is not very familiar at all with the USA. And bless his heart, he's watching the news and wondering what on earth he's getting himself into.
Yeah.
But so you can really pray for him in that transition, that it will go smoothly, that he will have good support systems around him as he adjusts to the culture. And of course, you can pray for us as we become empty nesters. And
yeah, not looking forward to it. Not happy about it at all.
But we're excited for him.
Yeah, very excited for him.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we will definitely be praying for that. And that's a big transition. And like you guys said, yeah, he does not know. Like it's just interesting to me. He is a passport holder for the U.S., but
New culture.
Totally new culture for him. So that's going to be, that's a big prayer request. So we'll be praying for that. Just thank you guys so much for jumping on here. As a reminder to county liners out there, this January is the month that we're highlighting global missionaries. So that includes Nachtigalls, the Tatmans, the De Franciscos. That includes the Ministry of At Home, and then Al Steiner, who we interviewed a couple weeks ago. So just thank you guys so much for being with us, and and just telling us a little bit of the history of Three Worlds. That's very helpful. We talk about Three Worlds a lot, but to hear the background of how it began is really important. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you again.
Well, we offer you guys a huge, we want to say thank you to all of you first. A huge thank you. And
couldn't have done it
to the
without
church.
Yeah, really true.
Absolutely. We appreciate it. So, all right. Well, we'll see you guys, and we'll see everybody else next week. Bye.